Today, we are very excited to have Sarah Ateek here with us. Did I pronounce that right? I don't know
You
that I've ever
did.
said your name out loud. That's so funny. So, Sarah and I have known each other for quite a long time through a variety of different social circles.
Yeah.
And recently, we've been talking in a more professional context, which has been interesting because I didn't realize how similar our sort of paths have been. So, Sarah works in marketing for the Straz Center, one of Tampa Bay's largest performing arts centers. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Sarah?
Yeah. So as mentioned, I am Sarah Ateek. I'm the marketing director at the Straz Center, the marketing director of events. We have another different side of my coin. Her name's Stephanie Pemberton, and she's a rock star. Um, but yeah, so I've been at the Straz for going on 10 years this May. I got into the industry when I was about 18. I asked for an internship at a local concert promoter, and that's really how I got my foot in the door. And then, as one does, I applied for a job. And then how I got into the role I'm in now is the person who had my role, she moved on to something else, and it was during a big time of year. And I went into my boss's office and I said, "Oh my God, she's leaving. How can I help? What do you want me to do? Do you want me to take Broadway?" And she was like, "Hold on, what?" She's like, "You want to?" I was like, well, it's got to be done. Like, did you want me to do it? I can do it. And that's how it happened. And I'm really good at it as it turns out. So I always say, if you'd said 10 years ago, you're going to be a marketer at Broadway, I would have laughed and said, no, I'm going to stick with the punk rock stuff. But the universe finds a way and is always right, it seems.
It seems like who wouldn't want to take Broadway? That seems like such a fun product to sell, you know?
Yeah, it's just not what I would have ever expected for my life, but I love it. So we'll take it.
So Warren
Um,
doesn't know. Go ahead, Warren.
oh yeah, I was going to say that's I'd love to hear more about the Straz Center in general and how it sits in the whole Tampa Bay cultural landscape. I've never been, but it sounds like a fascinating place, so I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, so it is one of the largest performing arts centers in the Southeast. We have, I'm gonna try to get this right. I believe we have 5 venues. Tico, J, other two. So 5 venues and an outdoor stage. So on any given night, 6 different things can be happening. We also
Wow.
have restaurants on site. We have a conservatory, the Patel Conservatory, which Dream, Reach, Create. We're building up the talent for the years to come. But yeah, on any given night, there can be at Broadway and Morsani Hall with an opera in Ferguson Hall. Job Site Theater, a regional theater company, could be doing something in Schimberg. We could be having a one-night event in the Jabe Theater while the Riverwalk stage is popping off, and the Tico Theater has some of our Patel Conservatory students putting on a thing. Yeah, it's not boring.
So where do
That's
they
a
all
lot.
park?
Where do they all park? I mean, downtown Tampa is growing every day.
I
So
know.
get creative. You take a ride share, walk, ride a bike, choose your own adventure, y'all.
That's true. Well, so one thing you and I have talked about a little bit, but I'm curious to hear about is performing arts centers specifically during the pandemic. You know, we work with a lot of museums and cultural institutions, and I get that it's now almost 4 years back, but I think things have changed in a more permanent way. So I'm curious to hear, first of all, what happened in 2020? What did you guys do? How did you pivot? What sorts of new programs or approaches did you take?
Yeah, I vividly remember the day that happened. It was oof. Um we pivoted really hard, and there are things that have stayed with us. Like for me, I focused on email marketing a lot more, keeping in touch with our consumers, our patrons. I'd send out an email about Broadway and like, here's some behind the scenes stuff just to keep them excited and engaged and remind them we were here. I also did something, we had the National Geographic Live program. So I do something similar, like here's their explorers, here's a cool podcast. And National Geographic was also doing something similar where they were doing Facebook live stream. So that kind of tied into what I was trying to do anyways. And again, we're still here. We're alive. We really, really, really need you. And then we went to doing events on Facebook Live, really utilizing our Riverwalk stage when it got safe enough to do so. And then eventually we did social distancing performances in our smaller Jabe Theater. And then pivoting left and right with all the mask mandates of we need you to wear masks, and just really getting used to changing. But I think one of the strengths of performing arts is that it's always live, right? So your principal could get sick and your swing comes in, and that's the nature of who we are. So I think if anything, it made those muscles stronger, and it made us as the administrative team get more creative, get more, I know the term is resourceful, but I prefer the term scrappy. We got scrappier, and we really came together as a team, and I would say, like, when we fully came back, like, the breath of fresh air, it was like a giant hug. Like, everybody was like, oh my gosh, I can experience something with someone else and we can share the same laugh, the same moment. Because I know, like, on a music scale, music saved my life at points in my life, right? I was having bad days and it was that one song that saved me. Theater does the same thing, y'all.
I understand that feeling. I mean, I played in bands up until my like late 20s, and when I first went to my first concert after the pandemic, kind of was subsiding to a point. I remember just that kind of tingly feeling of, oh my God, like that feeling of live music kind of like hitting you in your chest is just something magical.
I mean, I vividly remember it was before I was did marketer of Broadway. I was watching Matilda with my older sister in my venue. I brought her on a sister date. And there was a little girl behind me and she was singing every song and crying. And it was like, this is why we do what we do. And I still, like, it was years ago, y'all. And it was just like, this could be the moment that changed that girl's life. And I hope to God it was.
That's such a sweet memory. Have you stuck with any of those, like doing Facebook Lives, doing things online? Have you stuck with any of those practices?
Yeah, so our community engagement team has. So if you were to go on strazcenter.org and you were to look at some of our events, you might see something of like community town hall. Those are Facebook Live events. And that's a really great way to engage our community and maybe portions of our community who maybe have a harder time getting to the Straz Center, or they don't live here anymore, but they still want to feel engaged with the Tampa Bay area and specifically the Tampa Bay arts community. And just, I know, marketing 101, meeting people where they're at, yo.
It's marketing, but it's also accessibility, like you touched on. I think it's really important to talk about how we can make those programs and performances accessible to folks who can't park in downtown and then walk in, things like that. So it's such a nice way. I do think that that's been a long lasting win from the pandemic, that so many institutions have learned how to communicate to a broader audience and using different tools.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. And I think too, a win in a sense is because everything was taken away, that everyone woke up and said, this is so important to me. And maybe the importance of live theater, live performing arts, concerts, in Warren's case, I didn't realize how much that meant to me and how much that meant to my soul.
How are ticket sales now? Are you back to pre-pandemic levels, or are you amongst the rest of the cultural institutions who are still trying to build back?
It's a mix. We're seeing people are really gravitating towards the titles they know. They're more willing to spend the money on a sure bet, whereas titles where it's maybe taking a little bit more education, they're more hesitant to spend their dollars. And life is expensive. I'm not going to fault anybody for that. But that's on us, the marketers, to educate more, maybe mess around with price points a little bit. If we do this price, doesn't matter. If we do this messaging with this price, is that what moves the needles? And it's making us better at our craft, but it's just taking a little bit more time. But the blockbusters are the blockbusters, and people are like, oh my gosh, of course I'm going to see that show. I've loved it for eons.
Is the audience profile any different of people that are showing up, or is it like roughly the same?
It's looking to be a little bit younger these days, which is great.
That's great.
Always been the moment I stepped into the Straz Center, I was like, we need younger audience.
I think that's every single client we work with.
So I've noticed it's getting younger. And I think with our Riverwalk programming, we're getting a more diverse crowd that's like, oh, this place is rad. Because it's funny, we're like a big old performing arts center, and in our industry, we're a big old deal. But it's fun. Like the first show I ever saw at the Straz, y'all, was Black Star, which is a hip hop group. And otherwise, I went to the State Theater in Janus. Like I was the concert kid. So it's interesting, like anybody's entry point to the Straz Center and to performing arts.
So I want to learn more about your team, because you and I have talked in the past about how you have a unique team at the Straz that's working on marketing. A lot of our clients work with a lot of agencies, and you were like, no, we do everything in-house. I'm curious to hear about that.
Yeah, so we're an in-house agency. We have marketers that specialize in various things. We have somebody who does opera, and she's amazing. I'm always going to say these things of like, they're amazing, because I just really value everyone on the team. Like I said, there's another marketing director who handles internal clients. So like any development messaging, Shell Conservatory, anything that's an internal client, that's her realm. Her and her team do amazing things and create such compelling messaging about like, this is what your donations go towards. And then on my team, I have someone who specializes in longer runs and finer art and dance, finer art, like dance and cabaret. And then someone who's more like the one-nighters and the co-pros. And then we have the group sales department, which, is a really good indicator of how something's going to sell. If the groups are all about it, it's going to be great. If they're not, all right, that's a good traction of this. I'm just going to have to get more crafty. And then to your point, we're an in-house agency. We make our videos. We do our art. We have a PR team. We do all the things.
What do you not do in-house? What do you outsource?
What do we outsource? We lean towards digital specialists. We'll do our social media in-house, but like SEM and retargeting, OTT and all that, we'll give that to a specialist because that, Andy, it changes every 5 minutes. I would rather have somebody who lives in it do that every day. And then we bounce ideas off of each other and say, this is how my plan's working. This is what I think. And then them coming back and saying, cool, this is what we're seeing and how we mesh that together. But that might just be the only thing we do out of house.
How about the website?
Yeah. We had somebody lead it internally, but yes, the website was recently redone in the last few years, and that was an external client, of course, working with the internal team with objectives and goals and what we see for the Straz and how we want to move forward and all of that fun stuff.
I'm always curious, what's the breakdown of, let's say, marketing for digital versus traditional media?
So that's, I think, one of the parts where it pivoted during the pandemic, because traditional media was everything. We would do print, we would do like big broadcast spies because, that's what we did. And then we'll figure out these buys and then we'll come to digital. And now with the marketing plan is, all right, I'm going to start at digital and then the rest of the money is going to go to the rest. So that's a really big pivot that's happened. It's like when I'm starting an ad plan, legitimately, I'm starting with digital out of home and saying, let me start here. And then everything else we can figure out.
That's fascinating. Like one of the things we're working on right now, which is interesting, is we've had one of our clients actually come to us and say, you know what, not only are we doing so much less traditional media, we actually are trying to get rid of certain things. So we're actually in the middle of developing like playbills, digital playbills, so that we're not even printing things anymore.
Yeah. And that's, I like it because I'm all about being green. But that's a really cool pivot. And hearing people too be like, hey, we'd really like a digital version of this, and being like, okay, noted. We'll make that, and maybe eventually we can transition to less paper, which I would love.
It would be neat to give people the option. I'd love if I were walking in through the door to see, here's a QR code if you want the digital, or you can take the paper. It would, in my opinion, it would be a big expense up front to build that platform, but then eventually it's cheaper in the long run, I would guess.
Well, we have both options actually. So you can get the physical playbill, and then if you go on the Straz Center to Go app, the playbill is also there, so you can look through it at your leisure.
Yeah, I always think I'm gonna want that thing as like a leave behind, like take it with me as a souvenir, and then it gets thrown away almost immediately. So
not for the photo; it's the playbill in front of the stage. On Instagram, y'all.
Yep, that's about it exactly. So, do you guys do any influencer or UGC type of marketing? Are you actively invested in that? What does that look like?
Yeah, I really like influencer marketing. That's something we're putting a bigger emphasis on this year, and it's not just me; it's across the industry. Because I'll talk to colleagues, and we'll just be like, "Hey, what do you do?" I think that's one of my favorite part of the industry. Is like I call it Broadway Camp Broadway. But yeah, working with influencers, getting them content before to really engage, because the show's here for a week. But man, if I can get you to buy a ticket 2 weeks out, I'm great. So getting them content is this an influencer we haven't used before, and is there a little wiggle room with the show? So can I give you a promo code and track it and see is this something your fans care about? What were the stats in real time? And then when they're in town coming to opening night, having the social media team's great. They give me a whole folder after opening night of all this content so that we can use it in emails, and that we can use it personally, and then we can send it to the show and be like, look how cool this is. And the show's like, oh my God. Party. So yeah, we love it. It's great. It's a good way to build word of mouth. And if you're following the influencer to a degree, you trust them, and trust is everything.
I have to imagine with a sort of regional footprint, even, going so far as to say a broader footprint in the Southeast, you could potentially have a one-on-one relationship with influencers in a way that a lot of organizations and brands cannot. That's why they've got to employ agencies and all of that. So that must be, do you foresee having somebody on your team who just manages those relationships at some point? I can see that getting really time consuming. Or is it pretty easy so far? Okay.
Our our content coordinator, that's her gig.
Oh,
And
she does
it's
that?
great.
Cool.
She's been like, I'm actually having people reach out to me now. She's like, it's working. I was like,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
great. Love to hear it.
As soon as you have something to give, they all want to take. So it's yeah.
Like,
Amazing.
They trade in attention. They know their value. So yeah.
Yeah, right.
So that leads me to sort of a little like, what's around the corner in arts marketing? What are you seeing that sort of maybe you haven't been able to jump on yet, but you wish you could? Is there anything sort of cool that you're seeing?
So something I've wanted to do, and I really, really want to do it, is something that movies do really well. Is like, and tourism campaigns tend to do really well. Is like, here's this piece of content, but then it needs a story. So it's like an if then choose your own adventure of like, this was the piece of content you interacted with this. So these are the 3 things that you potentially get now, because we can not only do it to tell the story of like an event. So like you watch this B-roll, cool. We're going to serve you 2 different ads. You engage with this one. In my brain, it's like a STEM plot thing. But also doing that to tell the story of the Straz Center as a nonprofit, like telling our story. This is how we impact the community. These are all this is the Matilda moment, you know? That's something I really want to see, because movies do really well. Like you mess with a Marvel ad and you get like 3 different options, and then clearly you like this Marvel. Sorry, I'm not a Marvel person, but like I play Captain America, so I'm gonna get like Captain America stuff, and I'm gonna continue the journey, and I'm gonna be more invested and more stoked. And I would love to see us do that. I know it takes a lot of time and effort, but I think that could be a really engaging and great way to continue the story.
If you use those in your evergreen campaigns in nonprofit, in a lot of the fundraising marketing that we do, we consider those incomplete stories. So we're just telling little snippets at different stages, and you don't actually get the wrap up until you've accomplished the goal. So maybe it's you've finally given to this campaign, and so now you're getting like, here's how you impacted this particular human, or here was the intervention that happened because you were able to contribute. And it sort of ties your audience or that particular audience to whatever that storyline or that narrative is in a way that's particularly powerful, in my opinion, for the nonprofit sort of evergreen campaigns versus the single events. Don't get me wrong, they're fun and adventurous, but like you can really tug on the heartstrings with those emotional appeals when you have that backing you. So that's cool.
Yeah. So those are my hopes and dreams. And of course, the industry is getting more and more digital. You know, we're leaning harder into that. We're leaning harder into content. And that's something I will always go back to a show and say, cool, love it. I need more. And here's specifically what I would like to see. And having those open conversations about, because we're all cheering for the same team.
Yeah, I love all of this, because actually one of the questions that I had for you is exactly what you've just been talking about, which is like storytelling online, how to tell effective stories and how to just reach out at that emotional, heartstrings. And it's just great to hear.
Yeah. I mean, we live in the world of imagination, and we're storytellers. Like, let's really lean into that, and let's play up the imagination, and let's play up to the stories, and how cool is it? You go to a theater for like 2.5 hours, and if it's a really good show, you don't even remember your phone's on you. Like, how often does that
that's a
happen?
rare thing to be able to do to somebody, to get somebody to actually not get on their phone.
I mean, like, just, it's like such a sweet release, y'all. Like, this moment matters. And we live in such a world where there's so much noise and you don't often get it. Like, I remember seeing To Kill a Mockingbird. It was silent. It was amazing to see, like, be in a room with so many people so engrossed in this story and so believing. It's cool.
Do you go to all the shows?
No, I do not. I go to some of them. I really I like going home.
Yeah, I know. I think
When
that
you're
would be such a
I like life outside my job too, y'all. It's cool.
I know. That would be so hard though, because you want to go and you have the opportunity, but yeah, that's a tough line to draw for sure.
Yeah, and sometimes I do go see the show. Sometimes I might pop in on opening night to see what the guests are seeing, and maybe I'll stay till intermission to eavesdrop on what they're saying. But yeah, I mean, I'll go to some every once in a while, but I really do like my home life too.
I wonder if there's not some level of audio surveillance that has AI detection of sentiment analysis that you could be using to do that, so you can stop having to show up to get that information.
Oh, our blessed house management team gives me a performance report, so I can just review the next day too.
Ah, that works.
Cool.
Yeah. Are you using AI at all?
We are not. I know we want to, but we are not. We are in full-blown season mode, so we are just like, woo, all the time.
Yep.
But
I
yeah,
know.
I think that's a long-term goal, especially when it quiets down, to really do a little bit more digging. But it is something we want to try, like just even if it's just please AI make this subject line because I can't be creative.
Oh,
Right?
you should be doing that already. That's
So,
that's a 2 second.
yeah.
I'll
But
send you
yeah,
my webinar that I just delivered a presentation on Tuesday that was how to use AI in nonprofit marketing, and I'm shook at how so many people they're so scared to sort of dip their toe in the water or like where to begin, that I realized we need to talk about literally just how to set up an account and where to start at the very beginning, because so many people haven't. But yeah, exactly. Subject lines. I mean, that's one of the number one uses in email marketing is just developing. Give me 6 variations on this using really great persuasive language, make it a little more casual, add an emoji, et cetera. So it's really
yeah.
good at doing that kind of stuff. So cool.
Well, I'd love to see the presentation. I mean, I know we do what we can with it,
Uh-huh.
but I always run into people who are like, oh, they're doing substantially better than we are with it, and always up for learning.
Yeah.
I'm actually shocked that more. So we did a survey of about 900 nonprofit marketers back in the fall, and we found that about 51% were actually using AI in their day to day. 95% of those people are using it in content production specifically, helping with writing and content production. And then there's a lot of other options like data analysis is a huge one. We're going through research on a museum right now, and being able to we use walled garden, so we're not feeding the public LLMs or anything like that, but like you can run analysis on your audience really fast and sort of pull out some behavioral and psychographic data that is otherwise, pretty laborious to sort of comb through, especially when you're looking at qualitative information. It can really pull trends and sentiment and find all kinds of things from that. So anyway, it's been really fun sort of playing with that for us and sort of figuring out how we can empower ourselves to get deeper than we could with the limited amount of time we have servicing all the clients that we have. So it's been fun.
That's rad. I can't wait to watch that and send it to my team and be like, look, we're going to get smart together.
We want to talk about the Boundless campaign. I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that too.
Yeah, so the Boundless campaign, the Straz Center is going to go under construction and become even more amazing. And I'm excited about it because how many times do you think you're driving through whatever town you live in and you see a new building and you're like, what's that? That looks cool. What's that? So I think with the Boundless campaign, it's going to spark that. Ooh, what's that? Or I thought that was the Straz Center, but it looks different. Or I've never walked past this at the beginning, but now I'm interested. So I'm excited to see how it increases the awareness of the Straz Center throughout the community, or how it goes, you know what, I haven't thought of the Straz Center in a bit. I'm gonna go on their website and check out what's up. I think it's gonna help. I think it's just gonna be awesome. And the renderings of what's to come look incredible. Like it's a more open space. It's more inviting. We like to say that our aim is to have the Straz Center be Tampa Bay's living room where they just come and hang with us. And I think the new space will hopefully do that.
Tampa Bay's living room. That's such a sweet. Yeah. I think you're going to want people to take their feet off the coffee table sometimes, though, and maybe clean up their dirty coffee mugs. So you might want to think about the boundaries.
Right? It's not the playroom. You have this different.
That's very true. I know.
Yeah, that's the hope. And I think it'll happen. And we're such a good location. We are on the Riverwalk. I mean,
oh yeah,
it is gorgeous.
It is gorgeous. Yeah, it's neat to watch.
Yeah.
So are you following any other of your peers in other locations that are doing anything really cool that you think we should pay attention to?
Yeah. I mean, I have some friends, like I said, I call my industry Camp Broadway, that are doing all sorts of cool things. Cleveland does a really, really great job about just about everything. We'll follow email. We'll be on other people's email accounts just to see like how they're setting up. Like Deepak does really pretty email, so does Denver, and really looking at how do you do things. My very dear friend is the marketing director in Minneapolis. They just do cool stuff, and anytime like a venue launches a tour too, I might call them and be like, hey, how'd it go? What'd you do? So it's really, really neat to be able to have friends all over the United States and be able to say, hey, I'm having this. How did you handle it? Or celebrate each other's wins. Like when my friends have great things, being able to be like, hey, you're awesome. Good job. It's a community that I could have never guessed would be so supportive. And I don't know, I'm really lucky being a part of it.
That's really neat to hear. I think Warren and I feel the same way. I mean, that's how
Yeah.
we're here doing this together is we have a community of agency owners that we regularly lean on for support and talk about. And even though we might be competitors in a lot of ways, I think we recognize that the high tide rises all boats and that we can we both have an abundance, most of us have an abundance mindset and know that there's enough work that we're the right fit for that maybe Warren's not, or Warren's agency is the right fit for and we are not. And that it's been really a beneficial relationship for me too. So finding that support network, I think, is so important across your professionally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would, as far as
Yeah, and I love it too in an industry with Broadway in particular, but in the performing arts, you tend to get a lot of lifers. So you have this whole
Yeah.
trajectory. So like I have people that I look up to and that I'll call and be like, hey, I really need some advice, or hey, I'm having a moment. Can you just help? I'm better than I think I am, right? Because right now I'm not feeling too hot. I mean, we're human, right? We don't always feel like rock stars. And then it's cool. Like I'm mid-career, so I have a mentee. So when she announced her season the other day, I sent her a text and said, "Oh my God, it looks so good! I'm going to come over and see when the Wiz is coming out." And she's like, "Sweet." But it's nice because it's nice to be able to pass the torch and to have each other's backs and to spitball ideas and to say, "I'm having a great day," or "I'm having a bad day. How did you do this?" It's really, really cool. And to a degree, I know I said I came from the world of punk because I did, but it reminded me of the punk rock ethos of like, you have each other's back. It's community. It's do it yourself, earn it yourself. And these are all really good foundational blocks for any human. So to be able to find those punk rock sensibilities that mean everything to me in a world where I didn't expect to find it, how cool is that?
The theater kids knew all along.
See, I wasn't one of them, y'all.
I know I wasn't either, but it is a very similar ethos of just sort of support and camaraderie. And, I watch now with having a high school daughter, I'm watching her friends who are theater kids and just that whole group it's really something special for sure. So.
Yeah.
All right. So Warren and I are heading to the Nonprofit Technology Conference in Oregon in 2 weeks, right?
Okay.
Yeah, 2 weeks. But I'm curious, I am very excited because there's certain, I think, weak spots in the tech stacks that I see across of our client portals. I'm curious, I have 2 questions, Sarah. Number one, what is your tech stack? What are you guys using for ticketing? What are you using on your back end sort of tools? Are there some of them that you absolutely love that you want to share? And then are there any that you, I don't want you to publicly disparage anyone, so let's not go there. But are there any that are worth sort of us taking a look at that we should pay attention to that you think are kind of neat, especially if you've got a brand new website, you might have some new tech.
So I'm in the very privileged position of having people smarter than me who deal with all these things. So ticketing, we ticket in-house. I think that's pretty cool because when I want something changed, it could be done in like 24 hours because my ticketing team is amazing. But yeah, on the like I said, I am in a very privileged place. I have people smarter than me that I can be like, "Hey, I want a thing," and then they will make it happen, or they will say, "What if we did it this way?" Because that's what'll work better than what we have. So, don't have the best answer there. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm even thinking like, what platform do you use for your email marketing?
We use Prospect too. Yeah, and I think it works well. Again, I have a digital marketing team. I tell them exactly what I want, and they make it pretty. And I say, "Cool, you're the best. High five."
That's leadership.
Love it.
Yeah, exactly.
Find people smarter than you and hire them.
Yeah, for sure. Warren, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, just a couple last things. How do you use, or I think given what you just said, you might just say my team knows the answer to this, but like what kind of tips do you have for using digital marketing to like increase donations?
Ooh, yeah. I would say I've been in a few meetings where we've talked about this because it's just good to have a bunch of brains in the same room. Really just being creative with telling your story, and it's like marketing 101. Meet people where they're at. Why would this person care? Give them the right story. Give it the right 15-second clip or the right photo or is it a reader? Can I give them this narrative that's really beautiful and really says that is why? So it's that 101. It's who is this person? What do I think would make them tick? Why do I think that would make them tick? Do I have content? Do I need to get the content? Because we're in a giant performing arts center. We could go downstairs and in theory shoot that video class. We know when community engagement's going to go out. The show's about to load in. Like, can we work with the show to say, can we film your load in? Say, like, look at this magical thing that happens.
That's great. Go ahead, Andy.
I was going to ask the budget question because it sounds like you have ample budget. It sounds like you have a pretty decent budget to play with. And because you're doing a lot of things that I think if I were thinking about all the things I wanted to do, it sounds like you're doing a lot of those things. But let's say you had a ridiculous budget. I have previously said unlimited, but then they were like, can I buy Twitter since it's unlimited? And no, let's assume you can't buy Twitter, but you have maybe 3 times your budget or 5 times the budget that you're working with right now. How would you spend it?
I would have even more content creators. And I think to your budget note, sometimes I have a great budget. Other times I just have really awesome people on my team who can get what I need.
That's great.
And I think it's really just I work in the nonprofit space, so it's really utilizing my resources in the best way possible. It's one of my superpowers is being scrappy. I got it from my blessed mother. So like figuring out a way. But I would hire more content creators. I would get people who can put together a really beautiful video for me. Because if I can have the right content and I can get it formatted the right way, world's mine, y'all.
Yep. Saturate.
And have a really good creative writer and copywriter and line editor and have really, really, really good people at that. And maybe somebody who specializes in more like factual stuff and somebody who can get really creative and fun and
cool.
Really utilize their superpowers.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I love that.
I want to come back. I have one last thought that comes back to, where I started, which was I've never been to the Straz. And, it gets me thinking always about the idea of like, do you or do you have any plans to serve people who might not ever visit the venue, in person? I mean, that's all. I know that the in-person experience is always what every single performing arts theater is all about. But do you have plans or are you working on anything to like take care of people like me?
I mean, we do out of area campaigns to really get people excited of like, if you're coming to Tampa Bay, come hang out with us. That's something we do. And I would say that's probably the extent. I can't tell you the full answer because I also don't know, like, I don't have all the answers at the Straz Centers.
That's fair.
But yeah, and I think with the Balance campaign in particular, we're putting ourselves more out there, right? Trying to build the awareness of like, what a great staple is because you never know, Warren, you might want to move to Tampa Bay tomorrow. I
might visit at some point.
During spring training.
Spring training.
Yeah, that's true. It's going to happen eventually.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I love talking about marketing and arts and cultural centers. So this has been really fun.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I cannot wait to see your AI deck. I'm going to get so smart.
I'll send you a recording for sure. So as soon as we have it done. Good.
Thanks for doing this.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Bye.